What do you say, everybody? It's time for Monday Night Quarterback here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Going to hang out with some great guests from Bama on 3. BamaInsider.com. That's where you can find out all of the information that you want to know. Tomorrow's National Signing Day. Alabama right now steamrolling towards a #1 recruiting class. We're going to get into that tonight. We'll talk about the Sugar Bowl. A lot of big news as far as the Crimson Tide are concerned. It feels like so much has changed since just last week when we got together. And before we bring on Clint Lamb to kind of get into some of these topics, let me remind you guys, our show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. They're amazing, westgateal.com. Whether you're coming to town, maybe you want to check out Bama's basketball team, Coleman Coliseum. Maybe you just want to go to Tuscaloosa for whatever reason there is. Or maybe you want to live there. WestgateAL.com. They're amazing. The oversized balconies, 1 to 5 bedroom units that go from 900 to 3,000 square feet. The amazing kitchens that are Wolf and Sub-Zero. The parking, the Skygate Club where we do the post-game show when we're at home. So check that out at WestgateAL.com. Well, Clint, I mean, it feels like it's an eternity since we talked last week. But before we get into recruiting, your thoughts on the fact that it doesn't look like anyone's sitting out of the Sugar Bowl.
Were you surprised, Mick? I know I was.
Well, you know how I felt about it last week. You know, I just thought that these guys are paid, that this is part of the experience. It's a big bowl game. I'm shocked, but I wanted them to play. So I guess, like it tells me, Clint, that playing for Nick Saban still matters.
Yeah, and I think that kind of it all started with Bryce Young and Will Anderson and kind of their leadership and the fact that, they're both projected to go in the top 10. And if they're choosing or electing to participate in the bowl game, are they going to be on full workloads? Probably Bryce Young. I wouldn't foresee them like rotating quarterbacks unless Alabama was up big, but you might not see Will Anderson play or see his typical workload. But the fact that they are willing to participate and put themselves at risk, with an injury, and they were both asked about that and kind of their mindsets, just putting their faith in God and, it's kind of his will. And I thought that it was a good decision by both players. Does it, would it have been interesting to see some of these young guys get more reps because guys like Bryce Young and Will Anderson and Brian Branch and, Jordan Battle or, whoever it ended up being, chose not to participate in the bowl game? Sure. But at the same time, you want to win. And this is a great opportunity for Alabama to get a Sugar Bowl victory without playoff implications or a national championship on the line, which is, something that we haven't really seen during the Nick Saban era.
Very important game, though. I mean, it's still one of the all-time big bowl games, and it matters. You talk about these Sugar Bowl games for years to come, and also you hope that it builds momentum for the program moving forward, And tomorrow, Alabama hoping to build some momentum on National Signing Day. We can debate how important National Signing Day is now with the transfer portal. But it's still, I think, very important in the aspect that anything that you do, you want to be the best at. And one of those areas, Clint, with all the guys going out on the transfer portal that Alabama's really going to need to find some success is along the offensive line.
Yeah, I find it interesting. Like, you can have the debate on the importance of high school recruiting. Like, I understand that there are going to be programs that are going to be more geared towards the transfer portal, like an Ole Miss, or, you saw USC that really helped kickstart their kind of rebound or bounce back after, adding Lincoln Riley as their head coach, kind of kickstart the program in general. So I think that the portal definitely will always serve a major role. It will continue to serve a role for Alabama, but I think that Alabama wants to put an emphasis on recruiting the high school ranks and getting these guys in and developing them in a way that Alabama and Nick Saban in particular wants them to be developed. He doesn't want these guys to be at another program for, a year or 2 years or 3 years and then transfer in when they've kind of, at that point, they're already set in their ways. And it's very difficult to get those guys not to necessarily buy in, but just change a lot of habits that they've developed. And then when they've been good players at these other schools, like if you've done it a certain way and you've been successful there, it's a lot more difficult for you to wrap your mind around, well, why can't I continue to do it that way? So I think that with the way that the transfer portal in the last couple of years, the leadership aspect, and there's just been some different things that have changed under, the current program. I think that it's very important for Alabama to continue to recruit at a high level, and that includes the offensive line. And what's interesting about the offensive line in particular is that they're targeting guys that are much bigger. Like you look, I want to say probably the most impressive offensive line haul that Alabama has signed during the Nick Saban era was a couple of years ago in 2021. You had 2 5-star tackles in J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer. You had Terrence Ferguson. You had James Brockermeyer. You had Jaden Roberts. It was a very impressive collection of talent, much different than the unit that you're seeing being recruited right now, though. Like, I want to say that average of that group was around 6'4", 6'5", like 315 pounds. In the current group, I mean, you've got guys who are averaging 6'5", 6'6", 334 pounds. You've got this kind of emphasis on wanting to get a little bit bigger along your offensive line, being able to move the football more consistently on the ground, and then playing quality, good defense off of that, and, being able to get your play action pass going as well. So I think that it's definitely a lot different than we've seen in recent years, and I think that it's going to benefit Alabama in the long haul.
Why did they go from, bigger guys to smaller offensive linemen? I mean, do you know? And now I guess back the other direction. I'm sure it has to do with coaching, right? With their offensive line coach once.
Well, I think that it was them trying to get with the times.
Mm-hmm.
College football right now is such a pass-happy sport. So you want guys who are able to pass block more effectively. You didn't necessarily have to have the bigger offensive linemen that could really move people in the run game because they might be able to do that effectively, but how much were they limited athletically when it came to pass blocking? And that really had become the priority. And you saw that with Bryce Young as the quarterback. Like, Alabama was a passing first offense. They wanted to run the football. They couldn't do it consistently. And so they had to put a lot more on the passing attack. And in years past, you've seen them have a lot of success running the football effectively and consistently and playing the pass off of that, having a great play action, attack. And that's kind of taken a little bit of a back seat in recent years. And so I think there was an emphasis on getting more athletic, maybe getting a little bit smaller. Now they're wanting to get back to being, a bigger, more physical. All these other defenses in college football, including Alabama, they've gone from having those really big, front seven players, the Dante Hightowers, the Terrence Codys, the Rolando McClains, to getting smaller and faster to be able to kind of compensate for the way that the offensive game is changing. And you've still got teams like Georgia who are more committed to the run, and they have a lot of success because they're going against smaller, more undersized defenses that they can kind of push around and have their way with. So I think Alabama wants to get back to a little bit more of that, but also still get quality play at the quarterback position and at wide receiver.
Yeah, maybe try to find their identity again, because it just didn't feel like typical Alabama. Hey, before we do anything else, thank all of you guys that are hanging out with us in the comment section. I see Lucy says, Roll Tide. Katrina, Roll Tide. Let's go. Love the comments, man. Brock, Roll Tide. He says, Roll Tide, me and you, Clint. So a special shout out there. We got Gil from East New York, Brooklyn. So, hey, man, thanks all of you guys for being with us. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah. I know that's rolling right now as we talk Alabama football and get you ready for National Signing Day and the Sugar Bowl. So with everything else that we see, transfer portal and all of that, with this recruiting class tomorrow, what are some of the other positions that you think Alabama needs to really hit home runs on?
Well, I think that, if you were to ask fans, you'd probably get a lot of defensive line and James Smith, a 5-star prospect. I'm sure Joseph will talk a lot about these guys, kind of getting the particulars, but just from a bird's eye view and kind of where the current roster stands, you're losing DJ Dale, you're losing Byron Young, you might be losing Justin Neboigbe. That's a lot of experience that you've got up front defensively. And, as far as replacing some of those guys, you've got Jordan Renaud, who is more, is listed as an edge guy, but I think ultimately, before it's all said and done, he ends up being more of a guy who can play inside and out, but he's listed as a defensive lineman. You got Hunter Osborne, you got Edric Hill. And so I think you really need a headliner at that position, a guy that you can really rely on, that you kind of more than likely know is going to be involved in that rotation because you're losing so many guys. And you've got some good returning players, with Jaheim Otis and, Jamil Burrows showed a lot of really good things. And I think it would really help if Justin Eboigbe decided to come back as well. But you want as many players in that rotation as you could possibly get. And so I think a guy like James Smith would be huge. I think off-ball linebacker, because you're losing Henry To'oTo'o and you're losing Jalen Moody. You're losing two very experienced players at that position. You've got Justin Jefferson, a JUCO guy who is currently committed, but you probably want to be able to try to get, a more, tone-setting style of linebacker. And I think a guy like Q Russaw is certainly going to fit that bill. He's James Smith's teammate. Both are very good players. Both are five-star prospects. And so I think that off-ball linebacker, defensive line, offensively, with the offensive line and wide receiver, they've loaded up at both of those spots because they're losing a lot there. Still think the transfer portal could be an option for, especially the offensive line. But I think, there's also the possibility of a wide receiver maybe being mixed in there as well. It just depends. But I think that those are two very important positions as well. So they've done a really good job of locking up a lot of these spots and replenishing the depth. But they still got a little bit of work to do, and there's still several, big-time prospects who are out there.
Hanging out with Clint Lamb. I'm Mick Gillispie. It's Monday Night Quarterback, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. And let me remind you guys, you want to be part of BamaInsider.com. He's constantly on the message board with Jimmy Stein. You got so many things going on when you talk about Alabama football, and now's the time to take advantage. $10 gets you an entire year. $1 gets you 4 months if you just want to put your foot in the water. But we're changing team coverage, the face of team coverage and everything else going on, and we want you to be there as we move forward. And that'd make a great Christmas or Hanukkah gift. $10, you say, hey, for the Alabama fan who you think has everything, well, you're going to want that coverage and let them know everything that's going on. We cover it all. All right, let's kind of swing back and talk about the transfer portal a little bit. Alabama, lost some more guys since we talked last week. Or maybe we were just kind of we know where they're going now. I guess that's probably a better description. And seeing the 5-star wide receiver transfer to LSU, I got to tell you, that was a kind of a kick in the midsection to me.
For anybody that paid attention to his recruitment coming out of high school, I don't think that should be too much of a surprise because he was committed to LSU. They fired Ed Orgeron. He kind of wasn't really sure where that program was going to turn. They didn't know who the head coach was going to be.
Right.
Ultimately ended up switching to Alabama. Stuck with that commitment even after Brian Kelly was hired. But, the fact that you've got so many guys in front of him and a lot of them are, going to be coming back, you're losing a couple of those pieces. Like a JoJo Earle's entered the portal. Trayshawn Holden has also entered the portal. But at the same time, you've still got 3 freshmen who were included in that same class as him, who the coaching staff is very excited about, and Kendrick Law, Isaiah Bond, and Kobe Prentice. Plus, you've got Malik Benson coming in, the number 1 JUCO player. You've got Ja'Cory Brooks, who we expect to be back. I mean, he's definitely going to be back. He's a sophomore unless he chooses to enter the transfer portal, which would be a huge shock. And then potentially you might have Jermaine Burton back as well. So it was just a lot of, players at that position. He wanted to hop in the portal and look for a better opportunity, a more immediate playing time. And, he's from that area. And so he decided to go home to LSU. I still think it's not going to be super simple for him to get on the field. That Malik Neighbors is going to be coming back. You got Kayshon Boutte, a lot of, very promising players in that wide receiver core. So I wouldn't say that it's going to be a guarantee he's going to be on the field, in his first season. But at the same time, it's where he wants to be. It's where he wanted to be from the get-go. So I think that has a lot more to do with it. Fans are obviously disappointed. He's a talented player. Would have loved to have been able to keep him, at the very least for depth purposes. But at the same time, he was wanting to get where he was more comfortable.
Do you think and we're about to talk recruiting with Joseph Hastings. Last question for you, Clint. Do you think all of these guys, Alabama was kind of like, not a real good fit here? Or do you feel like that's not the case?
Okay, here's the thing. I've been asked this question a ton. And what people's got to understand is, what do we talk about all season? All season it was about the culture. And something feels off with the culture.
Yeah.
And then it hits the off season. And then it feels like Alabama is doing something about correcting that culture. Like they're if guys don't have the correct attitudes, if guys aren't going about things the right way, it's like, hey, you probably need to go find other opportunities elsewhere. And then fans freak out that they're actually doing that. I mean, this is them acting on what they wanted them to act on. So I don't think there's been anybody that's entered the portal. There's various reasons. Some of it's, I think Alabama is very much like, hey, yeah, I think you need to go find opportunities elsewhere. There's been a couple that I know that the staff wanted to keep. One that might surprise people, I think, is Amari Kite. They would have loved for him to stick around and compete for that starting left tackle job in the spring. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, there just hadn't been a whole lot of these players that have entered that Alabama's been like, trying to talk them out of it. And I think that, speaks volumes.
Yeah, awesome stuff, man. All right, well, big week next week when Alabama takes on Kansas State down near where there's a lot of LSU people in New Orleans. And if you get down there, Clint, do me a favor, go by Pat O'Brien's and have a hurricane, but I would limit myself to 2.
No, you're putting limits on it out the gate. Sometimes you just got to let the night take you where it takes you.
It's taking me to some bad places with those hurricanes.
I'm sure it's taking you to some good places too, though. Let's be honest. There's two sides of that coin.
Well, it's good until it gets bad. So, yeah, like I guess the beginning of the storm, I'm okay. And then the next day is miserable. So
is that what they call it, the hurricane?
I'm sure. They take the cups. You can keep the cups too if you go to Pat O'Brien's. That's some of those at my house back in the day. Anyway, great to see you, Clint, and Merry Christmas, and we'll talk again next week.
Absolutely, Mick. Good talking to you, and Merry Christmas to you as well, brother.
All right. Thanks, bro. Hey, before we bring on our next guest, let me remind you guys that you're hanging out with us here on Monday Night Quarterback. We're doing it on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. Be part of this channel. Over 80,000, so we're focused on 100,000. We want as many subscribers as Alabama has seats in Bryant-Denny Stadium and people. And so you guys are going to help us get there, and we appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we're live. Shows like this that come on. You get a reminder. They pop up on your screen, and then click it, and you can watch it. All right, let's talk recruiting. Tomorrow's the big day. At least it's the start of the signing season. Alabama right now, with the way that the commitments sit, number one recruiting class, but a lot can change between now and when this thing's all said and done. And here he is with On 3, covering Alabama for BamaInsider.com, Mr. Joseph Hastings. What is going on, dude?
Mick, I'm doing excellent. Low busy week ahead. Obviously, as you know, a bunch of big commitments coming on Wednesday and Thursday for programs across the country. Alabama's hoping to have a big day on Wednesday and then continue that momentum into Thursday. So very excited about what's ahead, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, between now and tomorrow, I mean, like, this is what it's all about, right? And then there's some guys that are going to sign on Thursday, and I'm sure there'll be a couple stragglers out there. What are we looking for tomorrow? How will we know that it's going to be a good day for Alabama, and how might we, get a sign that maybe it's not going the way we want it?
Yeah, so the early signing period, it begins on Wednesday, ends on Friday. So just so people are clear.
Wednesday. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, all good. So this is essentially an opportunity for prospects to sign their letter of intents. This binds them to the actual program that they've been verbally committed to, or that they're going to be committing to on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. I say that because most of the prospects that we're looking at in terms of Alabama targets are expected to announce on Wednesday, but there are some who are going to be deciding on Thursday too, such as Jordan Hall and Desmond Ricks, two big-time players out of the state of Florida. So, that's one of the storylines right there, is the fact that it could be a big Wednesday and a big Thursday for Alabama potentially. But Wednesday is obviously the one that we're paying attention to. Obviously offensive lineman Caden Proctor is currently committed to Iowa, 5-star prospect. Recently took an unofficial visit to Alabama this past weekend. He is set to sign on Wednesday morning at 8:45 a.m. Central. So Bama could potentially start off the day on a very, very strong note by flipping him. Then you look at Quay Rousseau, James Smith. We've talked about James Smith and Quay Rousseau pretty much every single segment since we started this, Mick. They're the top two prospects in the state of Alabama, 5 stars, address would address areas of need for the Crimson Tide with Rousseau at linebacker, James Smith in the interior of the defensive line. So obviously those two would be huge pickups. They're set to announce in the afternoon around 1 p.m. Central. So they're expected to sign with the same school, commit to and sign with the same school. And Alabama leads for both of them on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. So, I mean, we're just talking about 3 prospects right there who are 5 stars, top 25 recruits in top 20 recruits, on the On3 consensus in this class. Would be massive additions for Alabama on Wednesday. And then it could get even better with Damari Brown, the 4-star cornerback. He's going to be committing on Wednesday afternoon as well. You've got Desmond Ricks, Jordan Hall, as I mentioned before. They're set to announce their decisions on Thursday. So when you look at early signing period, it's potentially a massive week for Alabama in terms of adding to that number 1 class that they already have and addressing some key areas of need for them along the defense specifically and also on offense.
Offensive line, we just talked about it with Clint Lamb. Obviously a big position now for the Crimson Tide. They have a lot of guys committed, and hoping that they're able to bring those guys in because they're going to need them. They had a lot of players transfer, and there's a lot of spots now.
Yeah, so you mentioned the offensive line. Raymond Pulido, who's based out of California, he recently decommitted from Alabama, actually, and he's somebody who kind of flew under the radar a little bit. He's a 3-star prospect out of Apple Valley, California, and Alabama was the biggest school on in his top 5 before he decided to commit in August. It was kind of more so of a home feel for him. He wanted to be closer to home in comparison to going all the way out to Tuscaloosa from the West Coast. So you can't really, it's not necessarily a miss for Alabama staff. I think he had every intention of playing for Alabama, but, as the home stretch started to wind down, he decided to flip his commitment to Arizona. He'll sign with the Wildcats on Wednesday. They've had a pretty nice few days on the recruiting trail recently too. But mention Caden Proctor there. That would be a massive flip for the Crimson Tide, especially with the decommitment of Pulido. Proctor is one of the top offensive tackles in the country. He's somebody that you look at in this class in terms of offensive linemen and say, okay, he's someone who could potentially make a difference starting next year, whether it's outside on the tackle spot or you slide him inside initially at guard and then move him outside later on in his career at Alabama. He's just one of those types of recruits. You're going to see a lot of Tristan Wirfs comparisons with him because he's based out of Iowa. 5-star offensive tackle. And you look at the On3 comparison for him, it's Jackson Carman there who had gone to Clemson. But you're going to see comparisons to some of those top NFL guys with Caden Proctor. He's going to be a day 1 or day 2 pick. That's the type of projection that we have for him. So very, very exciting times for Alabama as they're the program now favored to flip Caden Proctor from Iowa, not Oregon, which had received the prediction last month. So offensive line, it already looks good right now with the 4 they have in the fold. Caden Proctor will take it up another level.
Yeah, was Pulido a surprise? I mean, was that something that Alabama didn't see coming, or was that one of those deals where they're like, look, we're kind of in the mix for maybe a bigger target and we need that slot?
They knew a few days beforehand, before that momentum with Proctor publicly started to unfold. I think they would have kept Raymond Pulido in the fold had he wanted to sign with Alabama. This wasn't a situation where, the staff got cold feet on him at the end or anything like that. It was just Raymond Pulido decided that he wanted to be out closer to the West Coast compared to making the trek out to Tuscaloosa at the next level. And, Bama was well aware of his plans before it became official. So it definitely didn't catch the Crimson Tide off target. They were definitely aware of it a week or two beforehand.
Guys, sorry, guys, make sure you like and subscribe as, I got something caught in my throat. It's probably all those prospects that are rolling towards us on National Signing Day, which the early period is on Wednesday, not tomorrow. I don't know. I was thinking today was Tuesday for some reason. I guess I just can't wait to get there. But what you can do is you can get there, BamaInsider.com, and it's so easy to do. $10 for a year, $1 for 4 months, but you get all the inside information on recruiting. It never stops. It just never stops. We're constantly banging all the top information. You can find out all the nuggets there. Don't be surprised on signing day, because these guys are going to keep you updated. Andrew Bone, Joseph Hastings, the entire On3 crew. this is one of the most exciting parts of being an Alabama fan, because I got to tell you, before Nick Saban came, National Signing Day was full of letdowns, Joseph. I can remember waiting on Tim Tebow and with bated breath, like thinking that he's really coming to Alabama. Shula's got him locked in. No. And every time it'd be like one or two like just elite players, and then they didn't come. Then Saban shows up, and it's like all of a sudden it's like you got the number one class every year. I mean, you beat everybody, and now it's Alabama and a couple other schools. But National Signing Day since Nick Saban's been head coach, been good times for Alabama.
And you look at the season that happened, that unfolded. Obviously, it's disappointing from the team side of things. You go 10-2. You easily could have gone 8-4, had some games not gone your way. But then you also look at the bright side of things, which is that Alabama had a lot more time to recruit on the trail, be very active with those in-home visits down the stretch in December during a crucial period. How much did that play a role in Alabama being set up in a good position with the prospects I mentioned beforehand? Not really too sure about that. Had they made the playoffs, would that have made a difference or not? But, that is one of the bright side of things, that not playing in the SEC championship, not having to prepare for the playoffs. The staff was able to dedicate a lot more time to the recruiting trail than they probably would have had they been in those games. So, yeah, it's kind of a give and take situation there. But, yeah, you mentioned it with how well Alabama does on signing day, just recruiting in general throughout the entire cycle. I mean, the expectation from Bama fans is that they land at least 3 5-stars this week. For most other programs, the hope is that you land maybe a high 4-star during a time like this. So it really just goes to show the standard that Alabama has and the expectations they hold themselves to, which they've earned for sure.
Yeah, awesome stuff. All right. Anything else that you want to add before we let you go on and continue to crush it for National Signing Day, which is all starts on Wednesday?
All starts on Wednesday, ends on Friday. And then you also got the National Signing Day in February, which has lost a lot of its luster, Mick. You look at the early signing period, and it's great. It allows prospects an opportunity to early enroll, make their decisions final before bowl games, etc. I think it is good. There are some downsides to it for sure, especially with coaching changes happening shortly before the early signing period begins, and sometimes even after. But there is the National Signing Day in February. There are some recruits who may end up some top recruits who may end up waiting until then, such as 5-star tight end Deuce Robinson, who Alabama is a finalist for, Centarian Perkins, an Ole Miss linebacker commitment. We really don't know his plans just yet, but if he holds off until February, Bama can get him for an official in January. It looks like it could be potentially a positive situation for Alabama there. So even though the big week, the big time is the big day is coming on Wednesday, we're still going to be paying attention to National Signing Day come February. So, and then also the transfer portal as well. Alabama's in the mix for CJ Dipre, Maryland tight end transfer. So yeah, it's not pertaining to just the early signing period in terms of good news and good additions to Alabama, moving forward. As we saw last year, they added some big time players out of the transfer portal. You can kind of expect them to do the same this time around.
All right, Joseph, thank you so much, my friend, and we'll talk to you next Monday. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, Mick. Thank you so much, man.
All right, great stuff as always. As we hang out with you here on Monday Night Quarterback. Guys, like and subscribe, hit the bell as we talk to you on a Monday during holiday season. Alabama hoping that this Wednesday, Christmas will come early and they'll bag a lot of prospects. And I bring my next guest on, the Monday Night Quarterback, presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. And he's been there watching Nick Saban on these National Signing Days bag huge prospects and giant scores. Unlike the time that we were crying expecting Tim Tebow to be an Alabama football player, how foolish were we? Nick Saban seems to win most of those battles.
Hey, true story, Mick. That when Tim Tebow committed to Alabama, I was actually at a wake. I'm not making that up. So it was fitting. It was fitting for the mood when Tebow chose the Gators that fateful day and probably right in 2004, I believe, 2005, February of 2005.
We thought he was coming.
There was a really good chance. I know that some people think that's a wives' tale or that couldn't have happened, but no. it was extremely possible, extremely realistic. Alabama didn't. Tim Tebow actually cried when he was. We've seen this happen, by the way, a couple different
I've seen
times.
him cry before. I was actually at a game he cried at once in 09.
You were. Well, he cried.
I love Tebow, though.
Yeah, he cried for having to tell Alabama and Mike Shula. No, he had grown very close to Mike Shula. Maybe it's that left-handed quarterback thing.
Yeah. Hey, look, it worked out well for us. Let's talk about why, and that's because National Signing Day, it all starts there. I mean, it really does. Saban's signing days have been amazing.
The consistency is crazy. You would think, Mick, somewhere along the line, there'd have been a dip. For whatever reason, something would have gone wrong with the staff. Something would have gone wrong in terms of some sort of scandal or something off the field. But what's amazing to me, Mick, is one season after another, starting with the signing class signed in February of 2008, didn't have an early signing day back then. That's how long the streak's been going. The sport has changed dramatically over the length of all of these number one classes, Mick, but there was no early signing day back in 08. Coach Saban signed at the time. It was considered maybe the best class in Alabama history in 2008, the Julio Jones, Mark Barron, Marcel Darius class of 08. And since that time, it has been one class after another that looks like the previous class before it. Remarkable consistency, and it completely, fully, and wholly explains the remarkable consistency on the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. Well, if you come in first place on National Signing Day, it coincides with coming in first place and winning a national championship on the field.
Well, that's the way they draw it up. And Nick Saban has, Nick Saban's the best friend the recruiting industry, the recruiting services have ever had, Mick. No one has proved the recruiting services correct more than Nick Saban, right?
True. Yeah.
I mean, he signs more 5-stars than anyone, greatest, highest recruiting rankings ever, then proves it on the field that, yes, in fact, these were the best players in the country. He proves that in every NFL draft. Talking about this earlier tonight, Mick, but Alabama with Reggie Ragland playing yesterday, that's the 70th Alabama football player to play in an NFL game this season, setting an all-time record. And while that says so much about Nick Saban, it says a lot about the recruiting. Nick Saban finds high school football players who will be future NFL players and gets them to sign the documents he puts in front of them. And this Wednesday will be no exception. It'll be yet another class that's ranked at the top or near the top. And based on overhearing your great interview with Joseph Hastings, another number one class looks extremely possible day after tomorrow.
Yeah, guys, don't forget, too, we'll have coverage of it right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. So like and subscribe. Hit the bell so that you know when we're live. And, give us a thumbs up. That's a way of saying roll tide as you kick it with us here on Monday Night Quarterback. We'll have Bone on Wednesday as well. We'll probably do a wrap-up show on Thursday where we look back over everything. We'll have videos on the guys as they commit to Alabama. It's going to be really fun to see how this thing turns out. And it's only part of the puzzle now, though. Jimmy, the other part is the portal. Portal in and portal out. Right now, we don't really know who's portaling in, but we know that there's a lot of guys portaling out.
Yeah, not necessarily a bad thing. Look, everybody wants to throw one blanket around all of it and say, some people might say you didn't want any of these guys to leave. That's not really completely accurate. Or some people might say, well, you wanted all of them out, and that's why they left. That's not really accurate either. The most fair way to look at it is on a case-by-case basis. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody has a different life story. Everyone has a different experience at Alabama playing for Coach Saban. The fact of the matter is some of these guys, left with a handshake and a wishing you luck. Another couple of guys may have left and they weren't crazy about them leaving. They wanted them to stick around for a couple more seasons. But nothing's been to this point, Mick, in my opinion, or based on what we know at BamaInsider, no one has left so far that has been, something akin to what happened with Drew Sanders a year ago, which is well documented, even with quotes from Coach Saban. They didn't want Drew Sanders to leave. They're like, hey, let's meet with your parents. Let's talk about moving you to another position. Hey, what's not making you happy? Give us a chance to fix it. They didn't want Drew Sanders to go, and basically were trying to talk him out of leaving as he was driving towards the Tuscaloosa city limits on the way to Fayetteville. They're trying to talk him out of it. That scene has not been repeated with the kids that have entered the portal. And the hope, Mick, is that maybe, hey, you might have 13, 14, 15, even 18 guys out. What's more important is the 2, 3, 4 guys you bring in from the portal. Can you balance out the talent that's leaving by raising the talent level with what you bring in? Even if you're only bringing in 3 or 4 while 16 or 17 hit the door, you can still improve the overall talent level of your starting lineup if you pick the right guys. I don't think Alabama's been too involved in recruiting the portal yet, save the tight end from Maryland, C.J. Depry. They've looked at him. He visited Ohio State this weekend, a little up in the air as to whether it's going to be Alabama or Ohio State there. He's the only guy we know that Alabama has actively recruited out of the portal. My feeling, though, Mick, is once this signing day comes and goes, I think you will see Alabama connected with more names in the transfer portal, maybe as soon as next week.
Yeah, very interesting. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense too, because you don't want to give your opposition, these other schools, reason to try to take your recruits from you, with the dirty recruiting. So you might as well hold off and then, make the move after National Signing Day, right? All right, well, let's talk about some guys that opted in. We had this debate last week. I was adamant that they should play. Because they're being paid, because I think that it would be better to have your star players in a game like this, a Sugar Bowl game that we both agree is a big deal. And for different reasons, or maybe the same reasons, we thought they weren't going to play. I wasn't very happy with them for not playing, even though they didn't announce it. I think you kind of understood the business a little more than I did, and we're both wrong. They're all staying, which is unbelievable to me. I just can't say how proud I am of these guys for representing the school that I graduated from and that we cover every day with just such respect. I mean, I love it.
It is great. And, one thing I didn't fully, I don't think, comprehend, Mick, until it happened, because sometimes you have some ideas of what's going to happen, or you have some thoughts or prediction, or maybe you hear some things from inside the program as to what's going to happen. I never really considered this until it did happen, Mick, and that's this. As much as Will is the leader of that defense and one of the great leaders in Alabama history, no doubt what Will's position is, it really begins and ends with Bryce. And by that, I mean this. Bryce is the presumed number 1 pick. No guarantee he's going to be the number 1 pick. We don't know that. There's Senior Bowl, combines, pro work. We don't know what's going to happen. But as of today, most NFL experts believe Bryce Young will be the number 1 pick in the draft by the Houston Texans. That's what most believe, right? Well, if the number 1 pick says, you know what, I'm going to play, how does anyone else not play?
Right.
How does a 2nd round pick, how does a 3rd round pick go, you know what? Hey, Bryce, I know you might be the top pick in the draft, but I might go in the 3rd round and I'm going to protect myself and I'm going to not risk injury, even though Bryce, an undersized outlier quarterback, as they call him in the draft process right now, an outlier. There's never been a quarterback his size selected with the 1st pick or even in the 1st round, frankly. There's been quarterbacks his height taken, but not his size and his weight. He's an outlier quarterback. He's playing. Once Bryce made it known to his teammates, and I'm sure he did well before the rest of us knew, Mick, but once his teammates knew, hey, Bryce is playing, how was anyone else going to opt out? So I really give Bryce a ton of credit here for sort of leading the way, setting the example. And frankly, to be honest, and since only Alabama fans listen to the show, we can say this. I think Bryce is kind of making some other opt-outs around the country look pretty bad. I was watching a minor bowl game the other night where a team's running back, who will be a day 3 pick at best, he opted out and didn't play with his teammates. And I'm like, gosh, number one pick in the draft, he's going to play. So maybe Bryce might be rebalancing this going forward, Mick. This might have effect beyond this season with other players at other schools in the future.
Yeah. Look, I agree with everything you said. I think that it really legitimizes how special it is to play football for Nick Saban, the greatest head coach in college football history, greater than anyone that's ever done it. And there's been some great guys that done it. There's one guy that's right there with him, but not as good as Nick Saban. He's the best. And for these guys to step around, and I'm not putting the Bear down, I still love the Bear too. But what I'm saying is that this guy is, if you had to have one win, whether it be recruiting, whether it be out on the football field, no matter what it is around the game of football, you take Nick Saban. And no question, right? I mean, no one's ever done what this guy's done in this period of time. And for these guys to stay, we knew it with Jalen Waddle, when he came back and played. But this felt like what the national media wanted. They wanted Alabama's program to go right down the toilet bowl. I felt like, Jimmy, like it was ridiculous when we're watching the talking heads. Alabama was beaten on 2 last-second field goals, right? They got Ohio State got drummed at home in their biggest game they play all season. And yet, if you would have watched those guys, it was like this to them. And I think it's this Alabama hate. And honestly, I felt like if these guys walk out, it really does show you that there's a slip in the program. And all they've done is, like you said, they just changed the game once again.
Well, it's also proof of this, Mick. The 10-2 season, the 2 last play losses, the 2 walk-off losses that Alabama suffered did not change the culture. I mean, the culture did not die with those 2 losses. The culture that Nick Saban has built over all of his years in Tuscaloosa is still there. The players, I think, want to play for him. And I think in the end, regardless of how any of them feel about Coach Saban, they don't want to disappoint him. Even in 2022, even when you're going to be maybe the first pick in the draft and maybe the first defensive player taken in the draft, they don't want to disappoint Coach Saban. And that just speaks volumes about these kids. And it makes me feel better, Mick, about the guys coming back next year, because Bryce and Will be gone, but the example they set will still be here. And they're sort of passing the mantle on to the next set of leaders, maybe guys we didn't consider leaders before, but hopefully the guys that will be the best players on the team next year. I'm talking about guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, guys like Dallas Turner, Jace McClellan, maybe Ja'Cory Brooks, J.C. Latham. Hopefully those guys have watched Bryce and Will and taken notes, if not literally, then figuratively. And hopefully we'll have some good leadership on the field next season as well.
Yeah, and then you look at Tennessee, all the chirping that you hear from them. I saw where they actually have a Beat Alabama Christmas ornament. I'm not even making this up, that they put on their tree for winning that game. They're in the Orange Bowl, and their 2 best receivers opt out, right?
Yeah, they've had opt-outs, and by the way, good.
Can you
players.
See that? I just want you to see that right there. This is real. That's a Beat Alabama Christmas ornament that somebody put up there. Tennessee Saturday night, 52-49. Can you imagine if we made a Christmas ornament for every regular season win that we've had in this program?
Where are you going to put that ornament?
It was on somebody's Facebook. I just saw it. I could have a whole tree of wins like that. But your 2 best receivers opt out. I mean, it really does show you kind of where things are. And like you said, Alabama's got so many things to be happy about right now.
Hey, even if you're on Tennessee's ornaments, it's still. Hey, that looks good for Alabama too, right? Somebody beats us and now it's a Christmas tree ornament. When's the last time Alabama won a game that we made a Christmas tree ornament?
Not in the regular season.
Before they invented Christmas trees. It may have been before they invented trees.
I don't know. I've got and I didn't put the Christmas tree up this year. I got an Alabama Christmas tree, right? And one of the ornaments is Big Al holding the national championship trophy. but it doesn't say anything about who we beat. And when you've won 18 of them, it's one of the ones. It's one of those. Okay, so it could be 2000, could be 92, could be 2009, maybe 11, 12. Who knows? But you can get that right there. Tennessee Saturday night, the year that they beat Alabama, Christmas ornament. Put that on your tree. Okay. But your two best receivers just opted out, which it really bugs me, because you want to see these teams go in at full strength. These are important bowl games. It's an Orange Bowl. It's a big deal. You're playing Clemson. Alabama's playing Kansas State. And this is what I'm getting to right now as we talk about this Sugar Bowl game. And we expected a lot of these guys to opt out. Obviously they didn't, and I'm glad. You want to win these football games. They're big games.
Well, I hope that Bryce and Will coming back as a precursor to, I don't want to say it. I hate saying it out loud because I might jinx it, but I need to go ahead and say it out loud because we're supposed to talk out loud on the show, right?
Yeah.
I hope this is a precursor, Bryce and Will playing to one of the few times Alabama has not been in the postseason playing for a championship. One of those times was the 2010 Michigan State game down in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando in 2010. That was one of the best games I've ever seen Alabama play under Nick Saban. I would call it a top 5 performance of the Saban era. Was the complete beatdown of Michigan State.
I felt sorry for him.
2010 Citrus Bowl. Wouldn't it be great if Bryce and Will coming back and playing in this game was a precursor to a similar performance? Because even though Alabama's not in the playoff, I have no doubt in my mind that Alabama playing its very best game of the season would be a lot for Kansas State to handle.
Yeah, look, I agree. When I went to that game, one of my friends worked for ESPN in Connecticut, and he brought some of his buddies down that went to Michigan State. And in the third quarter, I just put my arm around them. I said, "Look, man, this is the best that this team's played all year. This is what we thought they were, and they were." But they just waited until I just remember the ride back from Orlando going, and then they won the next 2 national championships. So, you know what? I mean, it happened that way. That was just one of those seasons where they had a lot of bad luck, maybe some chemistry stuff. And then, obviously, it does. It does. It does. I don't think that this team is quite as has the problems that team may have had,
Didn't have the injury problem. The 2010 team did. People forgotten in the cloud of time, but that team had very significant injury issues. And one thing about the Michigan State game, it sort of felt like going into the game, it was the first time all season the whole team had been healthy. I think they were missing one starter, Mark Barron, who had been hurt in the Auburn game that year. They were missing Barron and actually played a freshman safety, Jarek Williams, got the start, even though he had been redshirting all year. He played in Mark Barron's spot. Other than that, the other 21 guys were healthy for the first time all year, and Alabama just destroyed a top 10 ranked team. Michigan State, was the best team in the Big Ten that wasn't in the Rose Bowl or playing for the national championship, had 10 wins, and Alabama just destroyed them. I think if this Alabama team plays as well as it can, it will be too much for Kansas State to handle. Now, the fact of the matter is, Mick, as we know, Alabama's played 12 times and has yet to play a game that I would describe like that. Alabama has yet to put it all together. There's been some games where the offense was outstanding. I would even say in that loss that's hanging on the Christmas trees in Tennessee, and that loss, Alabama's offense played really well. I mean, there's 42 offensive points, 49 total points. You win, you score 49 on the road, you expect to win the game. It was just a really poor performance by the Alabama defense. Then you go down to Baton Rouge and lose there. But there, the defense played fairly well when you look at overall yardage totals, overall points. Alabama didn't give up a lot. Now, they didn't make key stops that they had the opportunity to in the fourth quarter, would have won the game with big stops. But overall, it's not like Alabama gave up a ton of points and yards in that LSU game, but the offense didn't play well. That was Bryce's worst game of the season, probably still feeling a lot of the effects of the shoulder injury. So Alabama just hasn't put it all together in one performance. I think they might in New Orleans if they take this real seriously. I sort of like the matchup, Mick. Alabama had trouble stopping the run against Auburn That will be the challenge against this Kansas State team. Everything with Kansas State begins with the run. It begins with Deuce Vaughn. It begins with a mobile quarterback in Adrian Martinez, assuming he's the quarterback that gets the start. It's a physical, two tight end, pound you type ground game. Alabama needs to answer for that because they didn't do a good job against Auburn. You can bet that's one of the messages on the practice field is not repeating the Auburn performance in terms of stopping the run.
Now, hopefully those Tennessee ornaments will have a referee whistle included with them. All right. Jimmy, are you going to the Sugar Bowl? And if you are, will you venture down the Bourbon Street? And if you do, have you ever been to Pat O'Brien's before?
Oh, I've been to Pat O'Brien's. I have been to Pat O'Brien's several times. In true, let's call it in true Jimmy fashion, I'm not going to the Sugar Bowl, but I am going to New Orleans tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
I'll be in New Orleans next couple of days. No, we've the family we've traveled a lot during the month of December, a whole lot, and we need to take a break. So we will actually not be in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, but I will go down there tomorrow for you, Mick, and I'll scout it out.
Yeah, go by, have one, maybe two hurricanes at Pat O'Brien's, but not three. Anything over that is bad territory. And honestly, down here today, it feels like a hurricane. I mean, it's raining outside of the studio right now, cats and dogs. So
I'm right up the street from you tonight, and it is crazy rain tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, anything else before we pack it up here on this Monday?
No, just real excited. I want everybody out there that's not a subscriber to Bama Insider. Now is the time for $10. And I'm not talking about my postings on the message board or my stories or even my buddy Clint Lamb, one of the best beat writers in the business. I'm talking about it's 2 days before signing day, and y'all need to know what Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings know. I mean, I work for the site, but I'm a fan of the site, especially these days with the incredible reporting that Bone and Hastings do. It's the best recruiting information, not just on the web today, Mick, but the best recruiting coverage in the history of Alabama sports on the internet. That's how good Bone and Hastings are. $10, you get not only this week and signing day, but $10 carries you all the way to next football season. That's an insane deal. And if you love Alabama football recruiting, sign up to read Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings' work and do it quickly.
And as Cousin Eddie so famously said, a membership to Bama Insider is the gift that keeps on giving all year round, right? Well, that was Jelly of the Month Club, but this is $10 and you get that for an entire year. It'd be a great stocking stuffer, really.
Family show. You're making me nervous about
Do you like Christmas Vacation? Is that one of your do you watch that during the holidays?
It's one of the go-tos. Yeah, I'll watch that in July.
Yeah, it's so good. I might go inside and watch it. I got fantasy football I got to watch tonight.
I'm in the same boat. And by the way, your Cubs stole my shortstop this week. So,
I know.
You owe me a beer.
I'm the one that was saying, hey, these contracts are crazy. And you saw I got absolutely railed on Twitter. And then they signed Dansby and everybody's like, oh, okay. We could talk about this all day. Yeah, I saw that. I kind of knew that was going to happen, but it's somebody else's $28 million a year for 14 years, Anyway, well, look, have a great Christmas holiday, Jimmy, and we'll talk to you next Monday. All right.
Thanks so much, Mick.
All right, that's Jimmy Stein talking football and talking Alabama and talking recruiting. Guys, make sure that you stay tuned with us. We're going to have everything going on here Wednesday, Thursday with the National Signing Day stuff. He mentioned Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings, and then the entire On3 crew that'll be involved in that. So keep us dialed in, and the way you do that is that you like and subscribe, you hit the bell. And then when we go live, say someone commits, we got a video telling you all about it. You're one of the first to know. And then hit the thumbs up. That's a great way of saying Roll Tide. Alabama in the mix for some more 5-star guys. So we'll see what happens, including a pair out of Montgomery. And we'll, see how it all goes down. It's been pretty good for Alabama since Nick Saban's been head coach. And Jimmy made a great point. The fact that Alabama hasn't, that they had some extra time to recruit, maybe that's going to pay off for the Crimson Tide this year because normally they're getting ready for a national championship. Now's the time to do it, though. $10 for an entire year of BamaInsider.com. So take advantage of that deal while it's still there. And don't forget, our show's brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium, Elizabeth Reed, Roll Tide. Thank you. Thank you. That like even more. Cousin Eddie wouldn't even be able to say the gift that keeps on giving. That's bigger than that. Thank you so much for the super chat. We appreciate it so much, and particularly you. You've been so good to us here lately. So Roll Tide, and thank you so much, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, however you celebrate the holidays. We really appreciate that. Also, Chris Daughtry behind the scenes. Thanks to him for our entire crew here on Monday Night QB. That included Clint Lamb, who is so good at the beat coverage. Great dude. And Joseph Hastings and Jimmy Stein, who you just saw, Chris Daughtry, and the guy that puts it all together, Kyle Henderson. I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. And Roll Tide.